People often talk about getting even, but I think the best way to do it is with a clear head and a solid plan. The first time I died, I swore to myself that if I ever got another chance, I would make sure the people responsible paid for what they did. That list started with my own fiancé. He had no idea that when he handed me a glass of wine with poison in it, I already knew what was coming. This time, I wasn't going to be the one leaving the party in an ambulance. The ballroom at the Crestwood Hotel was full of people in expensive clothes, their smiles not always genuine, but their diamonds definitely real. I smoothed down my red dress and watched my fiancé, Julian, from the other side of the room. He looked confident and handsome in his custom-tailored suit, effortlessly charming a group of potential investors. His hand was resting on my stepsister Clara's back, just a little too low to be considered casual. Anyone else might not have noticed, but I saw it for what it was. "Eleanor, darling," Julian called out when he saw me, waving me over. His smile was wide, but it never seemed to reach his eyes. "I was just telling everyone about our engagement party next month." I managed to form my own smile and walked across the polished marble floor. I could feel people watching me as I moved. I was the mysterious woman engaged to Julian Croft, the tech genius, and I was also set to inherit my family's fortune from Vance Biologics. What none of them knew was that in my first life, I never actually made it to that party. "You look beautiful," Julian whispered as he kissed my cheek. His fingers dug into my waist, a painful reminder of his possessiveness. "Your father's investors are very impressed." My father was standing nearby, deep in a conversation with some of his company's board members. He hadn't said a word to me all night, too focused on using my engagement to the Croft family to secure his own legacy. The merger between our companies would save his business from failing, and the only price was his daughter's future. "I need some fresh air," I said, gently pulling myself out of Julian's tight grip. Just then, his sister, Sophia, appeared next to us, holding a glass of champagne. "Brother dear, don't keep your fiancé all to yourself," she said with a polite smile. "I need a moment of girl talk." Sophia Croft was someone I hadn't quite figured out yet. In my previous life, she had been distant but never unkind, keeping to herself but never seeming like a threat. Julian let go of me, though he looked like he didn't want to. "Don't be too long," he said. His voice was light, but his eyes were serious. "I have a special toast planned later." As Sophia and I walked toward the balcony, she leaned in close. "He's planning something for tonight. You need to be careful." Before I could ask what she meant, my stepsister Clara cut us off. Her silver dress seemed to shimmer under the chandelier lights. "Eleanor, I was just looking for you," she said, handing me a glass of red wine. "Julian had this sent over for you. He said it's from his private collection." I took the glass, my hand steady as I looked at the dark red liquid. In my first life, I had taken that same glass and drank from it without a second thought. The memory of the convulsions, the pain, and the feeling of my life slipping away flashed in my mind. I had collapsed right in the middle of Julian's toast, a terrible accident that made my company weak and easy for a takeover, which was led by my supposedly grieving fiancé. "How nice of him," I said, making sure to notice the quick, subtle look that passed between Clara and Julian from across the room. "Would you mind holding this for a second? I just need to use the restroom." Clara's smile became a little strained as she took the glass back from me. "Don't take too long. Julian said his toast is especially for you." I'm sure it is, I thought to myself as I walked through the crowd toward the ladies' room. As soon as the door clicked shut behind me, I leaned against the cold marble counter and took a deep breath. After you've died once, you gain a new perspective on which moments in life are truly important. This was one of those moments. I opened my small clutch and checked that the little vial I'd brought was still there. It contained a strong sedative that would make someone pass out in about 20 minutes. It was the exact same thing Julian had planned to use on me, but this time, I had found it and removed it from my drink before coming here. The bathroom door opened and Sophia walked in, locking it behind her. "I know what my brother is planning," she said directly. "He's going to make it look like you collapsed, and then he's going to frame you for corporate espionage. He's already forged your signature on some documents." I looked at her, trying to understand her motives. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he killed my fiancé last year using the same method," she said, her voice trembling just a little. I can't prove it, but I know he did it. When I saw him setting up the same situation for you, I couldn't just stand by. That explained why Sophia had seemed so withdrawn lately. It wasn't just sadness over a broken engagement, it was grief mixed with suspicion. Thank you, I said, my voice sincere. But I already knew. Her eyebrows went up in surprise. How? I gave her a small, mysterious smile. Let's just say I've learned to pay very close attention to things. When we got back to the ballroom, I saw Clara still holding my glass of wine while she chatted with my father. It was the perfect opportunity. Clara! I called out as I walked over to them. I'll take that now, thank you. As I reached for the glass, I pretended to lose my balance for a moment, bumping into her arm. The red wine splashed over the side of the glass, staining the white tablecloth. Oh, I am so sorry. I'm so clumsy, I said, sounding genuinely flustered. Let me get you a new glass to make up for it. I hurried over to the bar before she could say anything, asking the bartender for 2 glasses of the same red wine. As he turned his back to get the bottle, I quickly and discreetly emptied the contents of my vial into one of the glasses. After he poured the wine, I thanked him, making sure to remember which glass was the one with the sedative. Here you go, I said, walking back to Clara and handing her the drugged glass. It's the least I can do after I made you spill yours. She took it, her smile still a little tight. Julian said this wine is very special, she commented. Then we should definitely save it for his toast, I suggested innocently. Across the room, I saw Julian check his watch. He then started to tap a spoon against his own wine glass to get everyone's attention. Clara seemed to get a little nervous standing next to me. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian started, his voice loud and clear, easily commanding the room's attention. I would like to propose a toast to my beautiful fiancée, Eleanor Vance. Every head in the room turned to look at me as Julian walked closer, his own glass raised. To new beginnings and successful partnerships, he continued. Clara moved closer to us, completing our little group of 3, all built on a foundation of lies. We all raised our glasses. I watched as Clara's eyes shifted nervously between Julian and me before she took a small sip of her wine. I lifted my own glass to my lips but didn't drink any of it. Soon we will be bringing together 2 of the most powerful families in our industry, Julian said, putting his arm around my waist. Vance Biologics, with its groundbreaking innovations, and Croft Innovations, with its extensive distribution network, it's a match made in corporate heaven. The crowd laughed and applauded. I could feel Julian's fingers tighten on my hip, a silent pressure telling me to drink. I pretended to take another small sip. About 10 minutes into Julian's speech about our bright future, Clara started to look unsteady on her feet. When she tried to say a few words to congratulate us, her speech was slurred. 15 minutes in, she spilled some of her wine down the front of her dress. By the time 20 minutes had passed, her knees gave out. Something's wrong with Clara! I yelled, faking concern as she collapsed onto the floor. The room instantly filled with chaos. People with medical training in the crowd rushed to help her. Julian just stood there, frozen, his face a mixture of confusion and a growing sense of horror as he realized the wrong person had been affected by his poison. Someone call an ambulance, a voice shouted as Clara was carefully carried out on a stretcher. I looked across the room and my eyes met Julian's. For a split second, I let my pretend concern disappear, and I let him see how I really felt. Cold, triumphant, and completely in control. The color drained from his face as he finally started to understand what had happened. This time, I wasn't going to be the one leaving in a body bag. The game was just getting started. The hospital waiting room had a strong smell of antiseptic and dishonesty. I sat perfectly straight, playing the part of the worried stepsister while my father paced back and forth in front of me. The doctors had pumped Clara's stomach and run tests. Her blood work showed signs of a powerful sedative, which could have been deadly when mixed with alcohol. It was the same combination that had killed me in my previous life. Who would do something like this? My father asked, more to himself than to me, running his hands through his graying hair. At 62, Lawrence Vance looked his age tonight. I kept my expression carefully neutral and concerned. The police said they were going to look at the hotel's security footage, my father added just before his phone rang, and he walked away to take the call. Through the window of the waiting room, I could see Julian talking with the doctor down the hall. His mask of a concerned fiancé slipped for a moment when he thought no one was looking, revealing the pure panic underneath. "Miss Vance," a voice said. I turned and saw Detective Miller standing next to me, holding a small notebook. "I just have a few more questions for you about what happened tonight." Her sharp eyes watched me closely as I answered her questions. Yes, Clara had been with Julian for most of the night. No, I hadn't seen anyone acting suspiciously near our drinks. Yes, I had been given the same wine but hadn't finished it. "And what is your relationship with your stepsister like?" Detective Miller asked. "It's complicated," I admitted, "but I would never want something like this to happen to her." That part was actually true. In my past life, I realized Clara had been manipulated by Julian just as much as I had. She wasn't a main player in his scheme, just a pawn. As the detective walked away, Sophia Croft sat down in the chair next to me. "The police questioned Julian for almost an hour," she whispered. "He's starting to unravel." "Good," I said simply. Sophia looked at me with a new kind of interest. "You're not at all like he described you." I offered a faint smile. "Most people aren't." 3 days later, I was standing in my apartment, looking at the wall inside my walk-in closet, which I had turned into an evidence board. It was covered with photos, documents, and strings connecting all the key people in Julian's plan. Clara was still in the hospital, stable but heavily sedated. Julian had been released from police questioning. His story that he had no idea how the sedative got into the wine was apparently believable enough for the time being. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Arthur, my father's chauffeur for many years. "Mr. Croft is asking about your father's medication schedule again. That's the third time this week." I took a small note and pinned it to my board. In my previous life, my father had died from what everyone thought was a heart attack just 2 weeks after my accident at the engagement party. Now, I knew it wasn't a coincidence at all. The merger agreement had a clause that said if either of the main parties died before the deal was final, their shares would be transferred to the other company at a fixed rate that heavily favored Croft Innovations. My doorbell rang at exactly noon. I opened it and saw Arthur standing there, his expression as serious as ever. "Come in," I said, leading him into my kitchen. "Were you followed?" Arthur shook his head. "I was careful." Arthur had been driving for my family for 20 years. In my past life, he was the one who had found my father's body. He had always been respectful and kind to me, even when my own father and stepmother were not. In this new life, he was the only one I felt I could trust with the truth, or at least part of it. "Julian's assistant looked at your father's calendar again," Arthur said, placing a small electronic device on my kitchen counter. "I was able to clone her phone. Now, everything she sees, we can see too." I picked up the small device. "You should have been a spy." A hint of a smile appeared on Arthur's face. "In another life, maybe." He had no idea how true that was. I had looked into Arthur's background this time around. He was former military intelligence before he started working as a civilian driver. My father had no idea about the skills of the man who drove his car every day. "There's something else," Arthur continued. "Your father changed his will last week." My stomach felt tight. "How?" "He's leaving 30% of his shares directly to Clara, completely bypassing you." I took in this new information. It was a serious problem for my plans. "It was Julian's influence," Arthur added. "Your stepmother insisted on it." My stepmother, Isabel, a former model who was 20 years younger than my father, had married him not long after my mother passed away. She brought her teenage daughter, Clara, into our family and slowly but surely pushed me out of my father's life. "We need to act more quickly," I said. "The charity auction is in 2 days. I'll talk to Sophia there and make my move." The Reed Foundation's annual charity auction was filled with wealthy people and those trying to climb the social ladder. I chose to wear a dark blue dress, with my hair up to show off the diamond earrings my father had given my mother for their 10th wedding anniversary. It was a calculated choice. Julian saw me as soon as I walked in, crossing the room with a smooth, predatory confidence. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low. "I was worried you wouldn't come." His eyes stayed on me for a moment before he asked, "How is Clara doing?" The doctors say she was very lucky, I replied coolly. A dangerous look flashed in his eyes. Yes, very fortunate, he said, his smile tight. Before he could say more, Sophia appeared and took my arm. I need to steal Eleanor for the silent auction, she said to him. As Sophia led me away, I could feel Julian's intense gaze on my back, sharp and full of something I couldn't quite read. Sophia took me to a quiet corner near a display of expensive watches. My brother has a private investigator following you, she said quietly. I paid him twice as much to report to me instead. I turned to look at her, a bit of confusion showing on my face. Why are you doing all this to help me? I asked, my voice even as I studied her, looking for any sign that she might be lying. Sophia's hand, with its perfectly painted nails, trembled just a bit as she took a sip of her champagne. Last year, my fiancé, James, discovered some problems in the research division at Croft Innovations. He was going to tell the board about them. The night before he was supposed to make his presentation, we had dinner with Julian. James collapsed right at the table. They said it was an allergic reaction, that he was allergic to shellfish, but there was no shellfish in anything he ate. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place in my mind. Exactly, Sophia confirmed, her eyes looking harder. Julian inherited the patents for James's work after he died, I said, the full realization hitting me. Convenient, wasn't it? Sophia said with a nod. And now you have proof. It's not enough to take to the police, but it's enough to convince me, she added, her voice dropping to a whisper. There's more. I found some documents about your father's company, specifically about a formula for a new cancer drug that Croft Innovations wants to get its hands on. This new piece of information was a shock. Julian needs to get into my father's research vault, I said out loud. The merger would give him the access he needs. Sophia nodded quickly. That formula alone is worth billions. But it's kept in your father's biometric vault, which only he can open. She paused, looking nervously down the hallway. And me, I finished her sentence, understanding everything now. As my father's only biological child, I was the backup for the biometric access. This fact made me both a valuable asset and a target. Before I could ask any more questions, the auctioneer announced that it was time for everyone to be seated. As Sophia and I walked toward the main hall, I saw a familiar face that made me feel cold all over. Dr. Evans, the doctor who had officially declared me dead in my previous life, was talking quietly with Julian near the bar. They both looked very serious. When Dr. Evans saw me looking at him, he looked shocked for a second before quickly hiding his reaction. I turned to Sophia and tried to sound casual. Who is that man talking to your brother? Dr. Evans? She said with a slight frown. He's been our family doctor for years. Why do you ask? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Sophia frowned deeper, but I could see her mind working. Just curious, I said quietly, making a mental note of this new connection. It was another piece of the puzzle fitting into place as we sat down for the auction. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Arthur. Emergency. Your father collapsed at home. An ambulance is taking him to Memorial Hospital. I stood up so suddenly that people at the nearby tables noticed. Julian looked up, his eyes narrowing as he saw my distressed expression. What's wrong? Sophia whispered. My father, I said as I grabbed my purse. I have to go. As I rushed to the exit, I saw Julian speaking urgently into his phone. I didn't have to hear what he was saying to know what was happening. The timeline of his plan was changing. In my previous life, I had died first, and then my father. This time, Julian was changing his strategy. Get rid of my father first and then me. That way, there would be no one left to object to the terms of the merger. But he didn't know what was different this time. This time, I knew his plan. This time, I was ready for him. I stepped out into the cool evening air, my resolve hardening. The first few threads of Julian's carefully constructed plan were starting to come loose. Soon, I would pull the one string that would make the entire thing fall apart. The hospital corridor seemed to stretch on forever as I ran towards the intensive care unit. The sound of my heels clicking on the clean floor was a constant reminder of how different this night was from my previous life. Doctors and nurses moved out of my way as I hurried past. my mind racing through different strategies and plans. I found Arthur standing outside my father's room, his usually calm face showing lines of worry. "What happened?" I asked immediately. "He said he felt dizzy during dinner and then he just collapsed," Arthur explained. "The doctors think it might be digitalis poisoning." Digitalis? I asked, the name of the drug sending a chill down my spine. It was a medication for the heart that could be deadly if the dose was even slightly too high. Clever, I said to myself. In my previous life, the autopsy had said my father's death was a heart attack. The digitalis was either never found or intentionally ignored. Who could have gotten to his food tonight? Arthur's eyes narrowed. Your stepmother made his tea for him herself, he said in a low voice. Of course she did. Isabel had always been a willing partner in Julian's schemes, though I didn't think she knew the full extent of his plans. For her, it was all about making sure Clara had a secure future, which in turn secured her own. A doctor came over to us. Miss Vance, he said, your father is stable for now, but he's unconscious. We've pumped his stomach and we're giving him the antidote. Will he be okay? I asked, my voice tight. It's too soon to say, the doctor replied. The next 24 hours will be critical. I nodded, my mind already working out what this meant for my own plans. With my father unable to make decisions but still alive, Julian couldn't use the death clause in the merger agreement yet. I still had some time. My phone buzzed again. It was Sophia. I walked a little ways away to answer her call. Julian left right after you did, she said immediately. He told everyone he was worried about your father, but Eleanor, he was smiling. Smiling. Are you in a private place? I asked her urgently. Yes. I need to get into your brother's home office. Can you get me inside? There was a short pause on the other end of the line. Tomorrow morning, Sophia finally said. He has a board meeting at 9. The Croft family mansion was a huge estate with acres of perfectly kept lawns, a symbol of both old wealth and modern technology. Sophia met me at a side entrance, her expression tense. We have 2 hours, she said, leading me through the large kitchen. The staff has been told you're here to talk about wedding plans. I followed her through the maze-like hallways, taking note of the security cameras and where their blind spots were. In my previous life, I had only been to this house once before I died. Julian had always preferred to meet at my apartment or in public places. Now I knew why. His home office was basically a control center for his operations. This is it, Sophia whispered, using a key card to open a heavy wooden door. I made a copy of his access card last night. The office was perfectly organized. It had a glass desk, leather chairs, and windows that went from the floor to the ceiling, offering a wide view of the city. 3 large computer monitors were set up on one wall, each one showing different streams of information. I'll stand guard, Sophia said, closing the door quietly behind her. I went straight to the computer and plugged in a USB drive I had brought with me. It was designed to copy his files and, at the same time, install a program that would give me secret access to his system later. While the program was running, I started to search the office, checking behind books on the shelves and in the desk drawers. I found a hidden safe behind a fake panel in the bookcase. My heart started to beat faster as I entered the combination I had found during my research, the date his mother had passed away. The safe clicked open. Inside, there was just one folder with the label Vance Acquisition. I took pictures of every single document with my phone. My hands were surprisingly steady, considering the explosive evidence I was looking at. The merger documents had a secret section. It stated that once the deal was complete, Julian would get the sole rights to my father's cancer drug formula, and my father's company would be slowly taken apart, its valuable assets sold off. But the most shocking thing I found was a medical file. It was my medical file. It listed allergies I never knew I had, along with my blood type, genetic information, and other details that would be very useful to someone who wanted to stage a fatal accident. As I put the documents back and closed the safe, the computer made a soft sound, indicating that the USB drive had finished its job. I removed it and made sure the computer looked exactly as it had before. Just as I was about to leave, I heard voices in the hallway. I froze, recognizing Julian's voice immediately. I don't care how it looks, Isabel. Robert is out of the picture now. We're moving on to the next phase. My stepmother's reply was too quiet for me to hear. I quickly looked around for a place to hide. The voices were getting closer. The doorknob started to turn, then Sophia's voice cut in. Julian, I thought you were at your meeting. It finished early, Julian replied. What are you doing here? Waiting for you, of course. I wanted to talk about the Foundation's new charity project. I slipped into the small bathroom connected to the office, leaving the door open just a crack so I could see Julian and Isabel walk into the room. My stepmother looked as elegant as ever. Her concern for my father in the hospital clearly hadn't affected her style. We need to speed things up, Julian said, walking over to his desk. With Robert out of commission, Eleanor has temporary control of Vance Biologics. Isabel sat on the edge of a chair. Clara said the research vault requires both Eleanor's and Robert's biometric scans. We still need her. Not for much longer, Julian said coldly. As soon as we have that formula, she becomes a liability. I held my breath, watching my stepmother's face for her reaction to what was basically my death sentence. She just nodded, as if they were talking about what to have for dinner. What about Clara? Isabel asked. She's been asking questions about what happened at the party. Julian's expression hardened. You need to handle your daughter, Isabel. She's already done what we needed her to do. A chill went down my spine. Clara wasn't just a pawn in their game. She was disposable to them. I had thought she was in on the plan, but now I saw that she might have been just another victim. She's your fiancé's sister, Isabel protested weakly. Stepsister, Julian corrected her. And soon she'll be neither. Eleanor's going to have a tragic accident as soon as the merger is finalized. Isabel turned a little pale, but still nodded. I understand. I had heard enough. While they kept talking, I sent a text to Sophia. Create a distraction in 2 minutes. I need to get out. Exactly 2 minutes later, as promised, a loud crash echoed from another part of the house. Julian and Isabel rushed out of the office, which gave me just enough time to slip out and go down a side hallway that Sophia had shown me earlier. I went to the hospital that afternoon and found Clara awake. She looked pale against the white hospital sheets, and her usually perfect hair was messy around her face. Eleanor, she said weakly, they told me you've been here to check on me every day. I had, in fact, made sure that the hospital security was keeping a close watch on her visitors. How are you feeling? I asked. Like I got hit by a bus, she said. The doctors told me I was drugged. I sat down next to her bed and looked at her face, trying to see if she was being deceptive. Clara, I have to ask you something really important. Did you know what Julian was planning? Her eyes grew wide. What are you talking about? The wine that made you sick, I said quietly. It was supposed to be for me. Clara's shocked expression looked completely genuine. That's impossible. Julian loves you. Julian loves what my family's company can do for his, I corrected her gently. Just like your mother loves what my father's money can do for her. Tears started to form in Clara's eyes. You're wrong. My mom would never... I took out my phone and played the recording I had made in Julian's office. Clara's face crumpled as she heard her own mother and Julian talking about her as if she were nothing more than a tool to be used. They poisoned Dad, too, I said softly. He's 3 doors down from here, fighting for his life. Clara's shock turned into anger, and some color returned to her pale face. Why are you telling me all this? Because you have a right to know the truth, I replied, and because I need your help. She let out a bitter laugh. Why would I help you? We've never even really liked each other. I leaned in closer. Because they were ready to sacrifice you, Clara. And they will do it again if it helps them get what they want. Clara was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything she had just learned. Finally, she looked me in the eyes. What do you need me to do? I need you to keep acting like the perfect, obedient daughter, I explained, just for a little bit longer. Can you do that? She nodded slowly, a new kind of understanding passing between us. For the first time since our parents got married, Clara and I were on the same side. As I was leaving Clara's room, I saw Dr. Evans going into my father's hospital suite. The same doctor who had pronounced me dead in my past life was now taking care of my father. The coincidence was too great to ignore. I quickly stepped into an alcove and called Arthur. I need you to get to the hospital right now. Do not let Dr. Evans be alone with my father. I'm already here, he replied. I saw him on the security camera feed and notified hospital security. They're keeping an eye on your father's room. I smiled, once again thankful for his quick thinking. There's been a change of plans. We're moving things up. Are you sure? The charity gala is still 3 days away, I asked, needing reassurance. I'm sure, he confirmed with a firm voice. Julian is getting desperate. We have to make our move first. When I ended the call, I sensed someone behind me. I turned around and saw Sophia standing a few feet away, her expression hard to read. You're playing a very dangerous game, Eleanor, she said quietly. We all are, I replied, my voice calm but firm. The difference is that this time, I know who all the players are. Sophia studied me, a new respect in her eyes. Who are you, really? No one just transforms from a naive heiress into a master planner overnight. If only she knew what it had cost me to get to this point. Let's just say I've had a whole lifetime to get ready for this, I answered vaguely. Are you still with me? Sophia nodded, her determination matching my own. To the very end. As we walked out of the hospital together, I thought about how different the situation was this time around. In my previous life, I was alone and an easy target. But now, I had people on my side. Sophia, Arthur, and even Clara. Julian still thought he was in control, pulling all the strings, not knowing that I had already died once holding those same strings. And in death, I had seen exactly how they were all connected. This time, I wasn't just going to survive his plan. I was going to use it to destroy him. The Vance Biologics Research Building was a modern, impressive structure on the edge of the city. I hadn't been inside since my mother died 5 years ago. She was the real scientific genius behind the company's success, a fact my father conveniently downplayed after she was gone. The board is waiting for you in the main conference room, my father's assistant told me as I walked through the lobby. She seemed nervous, not quite sure how to act around the boss's daughter, who was now in charge while he was in the hospital. And the security team? I asked. They're in place as you requested, she said. Although I should let you know, some of the board members are questioning why it's necessary. I just nodded, dismissing her concern. In my past life, I would have been too timid to give orders like this. But dying has a way of getting rid of self-doubt. The boardroom went quiet as soon as I walked in. 8 middle-aged men and 2 women looked at me with a mix of doubt and worry. At the head of the table sat Simon Hayes, my father's second-in-command and a man he had considered a friend for years. Eleanor, Simon greeted me, his warmth feeling forced. We are all very worried about your father. How is he? He's stable, but still unconscious, I said as I took my seat. And that's why I've called this emergency meeting. Simon's smile faded, and the atmosphere in the room grew tense. We appreciate you keeping us informed, but maybe it would be better to wait on making any big decisions until Robert has recovered. That is not an option, I stated. I opened my laptop and connected it to the large screen in the room. I have proof that Croft Innovations is planning a hostile takeover of Vance Biologics, using our merger as a cover. A wave of murmurs went through the room as I displayed the documents I had taken pictures of in Julian's office for everyone to see. These are confidential internal documents from Croft Innovations, I explained, watching the shock spread across their faces. As you can see, once the merger is finalized, their plan is to dissolve our research division and take full ownership of the CF27 formula. CF27 was my mother's last project before she died. It was a groundbreaking cancer treatment that had shown incredible promise in its early stages. The entire future of our company depended on its successful development. How did you get these? Simon demanded, his face turning red. That's not important right now, I replied coolly. What's important is that they are real. My father's sudden illness was not a coincidence. It was a planned attempt to speed up the merger while he was unable to object. One of the female board members, Dr. Lynn, spoke up. These are very serious accusations, Miss Vance. Do you have any evidence that connects Mr. Croft to your father's condition? The hospital has confirmed he was poisoned with digitalis, I said with a nod. The same substance was found in my stepsister's system after she accidentally drank a glass of wine that was meant for me at the engagement gala. The room was filled with shocked gasps and exclamations. I let the noise continue for a moment before I raised my hand to ask for silence. I have already put extra security measures in place to protect the CF27 formula, and I have temporarily halted all merger proceedings, citing my father's medical emergency. Simon's face had gone from red to a pale white. You can't do that without the board's approval. Actually, I can. I corrected him smoothly. My father gave me power of attorney last year. I've already submitted the official paperwork. It was a lie. My father had never done that, but I knew Simon wouldn't challenge me in front of everyone without double-checking first. By the time he found out I was bluffing, it would be too late. What exactly are you suggesting we do? Dr. Lin asked. We go ahead with the charity gala tomorrow night, just as planned, I said, my voice confident. It will be a good chance to see who Mr. Croft tries to connect with now that his original plan has been ruined. What I didn't tell them was that the gala had another, much more personal meaning for me. It was the place where I had died in my previous life, poisoned by a glass of champagne during a toast. This time, things would play out very differently. After the meeting, Simon pulled me aside. Your father never said anything about giving you power of attorney, he said, his voice low and full of suspicion. I looked him straight in the eye. There are a lot of things my father hasn't told you, Simon. For example, the fact that you've been leaking confidential company information to Croft Innovations for months? The color drained from his face. That's ridiculous. Is it? I took out my phone and played a recording. Simon's voice was unmistakable, talking about clinical trial results with someone he called JC. You've been recording my calls? He sputtered, losing his composure. No, I replied coolly. You've been using my father's private office line for your secret conversations, thinking no one was monitoring it. But they were. Simon's shoulders slumped in defeat. Julian promised me a spot on the executive board after the merger. He said it would be good for everyone. Everyone except the patients who are waiting for CF27, I said coldly, and everyone except my father. That evening, I met Sophia at a small coffee shop a few blocks away from the hospital. She slid a USB drive across the table to me. This is everything from Julian's private server, she said. The encryption was tough, but I found someone who could get past it. I raised an eyebrow. Someone you can trust? Someone who hates my brother even more than we do, Sophia said with a small smirk. James's brother. I'm surprised, I said. He's been trying to find evidence against Julian ever since the accident, she confirmed. I plugged the drive into my laptop and my eyes widened as I looked through the files. There were financial records, secret deals, and worst of all, communications with Isabel that dated back 3 years, long before I was even engaged to Julian. They've been planning this for years, I murmured. Sophia nodded grimly. Julian has been systematically going after pharmaceutical companies with promising research. Your mother's formula is just his latest target. A text from Arthur appeared on my phone. Dr. Evans tried to change your father's medication. Hospital security stopped him. He's being questioned by the police now. I showed the message to Sophia. We need to move faster. The gala is tomorrow night, and Julian is getting desperate. What do you need me to do? She asked. Convince Julian that I don't suspect a thing, I replied. Tell him I'm completely devastated by my father's condition and that I'm looking to him for support. Sophia's eyes narrowed. And what's the real plan? The less you know right now, the safer you'll be, I told her as I closed my laptop. Just make sure you wear something waterproof to the gala tomorrow. She looked confused by that last part, but nodded anyway. As she got up to leave, she hesitated. Eleanor, be careful. When Julian figures out that he's been outsmarted, he's going to be truly dangerous. I gave her a small, thin smile. I'm counting on it. The morning of the gala, I went to visit Clara at the hospital. She had been moved out of intensive care and into a regular room. Her recovery was going well enough that the doctors were planning to let her go home the next day. Mother called, she said as soon as I walked in. She wants me to come to the gala tonight to show that our family is united. I sat down on the chair next to her bed. Perfect. That's exactly what we need. Clara looked unsure. Are you sure this is going to work? Julian isn't an idiot. He's going to suspect something is wrong. Suspecting something isn't the same as having proof, I replied. All I need you to do is stay close to your mother and record everything she says. Can you do that? She nodded, fiddling with the hospital bracelet on her wrist. What about Dad? I mean, your father? Is he safe? Hospital security has been doubled, and Dr. Evans has been banned from the hospital. Clara bit her lip. I still can't believe Mom that she could do something like that. People will surprise you, I said softly, sometimes in the worst ways possible. She met my gaze. You've changed, Eleanor. Before all of this, you were so trusting, so naive. Alive, I supplied a harder tone. Alive, Clara finished. You seem like someone who died and then came back stronger. The irony of what she said almost made me laugh. If she only knew how right she was. We become who we need to be, I said simply. I'll have a car pick you up tonight at 7. The grand ballroom of the city's art museum was sparkling with light from the chandeliers and the expensive jewelry worn by the city's wealthiest residents. I made a point of arriving late, ensuring I would make an entrance in a striking, blood-red dress that hugged my body before flaring out at the knees. In my past life, I had worn a blue dress to this event, the same color as the one they buried me in. Julian saw me right away, excusing himself from a conversation with some investors to meet me. He looked flawless in his tuxedo, his smile polished and perfect. Eleanor, he said, kissing my cheek, I'm so happy you could make it. I was worried you might stay at the hospital. Father would want me to be here to represent the family, I replied, taking a glass of champagne from a waiter who was passing by. I didn't drink it, of course. His eyes glanced at my untouched glass. Not thirsty? I'm saving myself for the toast, I said with a smile that didn't quite show in my eyes. Julian's expression stayed pleasant, but I could see the quick calculation happening behind his eyes. Speaking of which, I've been meaning to talk to you about the merger timeline, especially with your father's condition. Let's not talk about business tonight, I interrupted, placing a hand on his arm. I've been thinking about us, Julian, about our future. His eyebrows raised slightly. Oh, I've realized just how much I need you right now, I continued, forcing a vulnerability into my voice that I didn't feel. With Father being sick, the board is putting a lot of pressure on me to make decisions I'm not ready for. I was thinking, maybe we could speed up our plans. He was giving me his full attention now. What did you have in mind? The board would be much more responsive to my husband than to just my fiancé, I suggested. Maybe we could have a small, private ceremony next week. We can still have the big wedding later on. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head as he reevaluated his strategy. A husband would have even more legal claim to Vance Biologics than a fiancé would. I think that's a wonderful idea, he said, squeezing my hand. Nothing would make me happier. The orchestra started to play, signaling that it was time for dinner to begin. Julian offered me his arm, and I took it, letting him lead me to our table. Isabel and Clara were already there, along with Sophia and a few other important donors. Clara caught my eye for a moment and gave me a tiny, almost unnoticeable nod. She was wearing the recording device, just as we had planned. Dinner went by without any issues, with Julian playing the part of the concerned and supportive fiancé to perfection. I noticed him signal a waiter a few times, his eyes darting to my water glass. I made a point of not touching it, telling him I had a headache that made it hard for me to drink anything. As the dessert plates were being cleared, Julian stood up and tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. The room slowly quieted down. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice easily carrying across the large room. I would like to propose a toast to the Vance family, to Robert, who we all hope will have a speedy recovery, and to my beautiful fiancée, Eleanor, whose strength during this difficult time has been nothing short of inspiring. Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. In fact, Julian continued, Eleanor has suggested that we move our wedding plans forward. A private ceremony next week. Applause broke out and several guests called out their congratulations. I saw the look of surprise on Isabel's face, which she quickly covered with a tight smile. This was not part of their original plan. To new beginnings, Julian finished, raising his glass, and to the bright future of Vance Croft Biologics. Everyone drank, I pretended to take a sip, watching as Julian's eyes followed my glass to my lips. I set it back down, still almost completely full. After the auction part of the evening began, Julian pulled me aside. "You've hardly had any of your champagne," he noted, his tone light, but his eyes were hard. "I told you I have a headache," I said. "Maybe some fresh air would do me good." His grip on my arm tightened as he led me towards the doors that opened onto the terrace. I stood on the empty terrace, the cool night air a sharp contrast to the warmth of the ballroom behind us. Julian closed the doors, shutting out the noise from the gala. "You know," he said, his tone conversational, "I've always admired how smart you are, Eleanor. It's one of the reasons I chose you." "Chose me," I repeated, my voice laced with fake confusion. "For the merger?" "Of course," he answered smoothly, but his act was starting to fall apart. The charming mask was slipping away. "But recently, I've started to think that maybe I underestimated you." I looked him straight in the eyes. "Yes, you did." His smile turned cold. "I paid a visit to your father today. I'm afraid he's not doing very well. The doctors are worried about some complications." "What did you do?" I demanded, a genuine slice of fear cutting through me. "Nothing. Yet," Julian replied, his voice low and controlled. "But hospitals can be such dangerous places. Infections, mistakes with medication, anything can happen." I pulled my arm out of his grasp. "You won't get away with this." "I already have," he said with a chilling calm, pulling a small vial from his pocket. "Do you know what this is? It's a concentrated version of what was in your wine glass. It's untraceable after 24 hours. Like my heart was racing as I backed away towards the edge of the terrace. Julian moved towards me slowly, like a predator trapping its prey. "The merger agreement has a clause that transfers control of the company if either of the signers becomes incapacitated," he continued, his voice growing colder. "With Robert in critical condition and you about to have a terrible accident, Vance Biologics will be mine by tomorrow morning." Suddenly, he lunged at me, grabbing my arm and trying to force the vial towards my mouth. I twisted away, our struggle hidden from the view of the ballroom by the heavy curtains on the terrace doors. "No one is going to help you this time," Julian hissed, his handsome face twisted with rage. "That's where you're wrong," I replied, managing to press the emergency button on my bracelet, which was a signal to Arthur. Julian saw the movement. "What did you just do?" Before I could answer him, the terrace doors flew open, and Detective Miller was standing there with two other police officers. "Julian Croft," she announced, "you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Eleanor Vance and the poisoning of Robert Vance." Julian let go of me instantly, his face a perfect picture of shocked innocence. "This is ridiculous. I was just getting some fresh air with my fiancé." "And the vial you're holding in your hand?" Detective Miller asked, pointing. He looked down as if surprised to see it still clutched in his fingers. It's just a breath freshener." "We'll let the forensics lab figure that out," she replied, nodding to the officers who stepped forward to put him in handcuffs. As they led him away, Julian looked back at me and I could see the understanding and pure fury dawning in his eyes. "You planned this," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "All of it." I gave him a cold smile. "Just returning the favor." Back inside the ballroom, guests were whispering and staring as Julian was escorted out through the crowd. Sophia came to my side, her face pale but her expression determined. "It's over," she said quietly. "The evidence has been sent to the prosecutor's office." I nodded, feeling a heavy weight finally lift off my shoulders. "And Isabel is being questioned by another detective right now." Clara's recording was very revealing. I looked across the room and saw Clara standing near the entrance, watching her mother being led away. Our eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between us. As the commotion from the arrest started to die down, Simon Hayes cautiously approached me. "Eleanor," he started awkwardly, "the board would like to express our reconsideration of your leadership abilities." "Save it, Simon," I cut him off. "I expect your letter of resignation on my desk by morning, along with the resignations of anyone else who was helping Croft." He went pale but nodded, then slinked away into the thinning crowd. Arthur appeared beside me, his usually serious face showing a hint of satisfaction. "Your father is awake," he told me. "He's asking for you." A wave of relief washed over me. In my previous life, I never got the chance to say goodbye to my father. Now, maybe we could have a fresh start. As I gathered my things to leave for the hospital, I saw my reflection in a large decorative mirror. The woman looking back at me was not the same person who had died in this very room in another lifetime. She was stronger, smarter, and had been completely changed by her experience with death. This time, I was the one who had served the poison, not in a wine glass, but in the form of cold, hard justice. The hospital room was quiet, with only the steady beeping of the heart monitor breaking the silence. My father seemed smaller somehow, propped up against white pillows with IV tubes in his arms. His eyes, which were just like mine, followed me as I walked into the room. "Eleanor," he said, his voice weak and hoarse. I sat in the chair next to his bed, smoothing out my dress. "Hello, Father." They told me what happened. He reached for a glass of water, his hand shaking. I helped him take a drink, thinking about how he had never done something so simple for me when I was sick as a child. "Julian tried to kill you," he said. "And you," I added calmly. "But that's not all he was planning." My father's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I took out my tablet and opened the file that contained all of Julian's detailed plans for Vance Biologics. My father's face got paler and paler as he scrolled through the documents. "He was after your mother's formula the whole time," I explained. "CF27 was his goal from the very beginning." "But how did he even know about it?" my father asked, looking genuinely puzzled. "We've always kept that locked up in the vault." "You kept the formula safe," I corrected him, "but you didn't keep the people around you safe." The understanding dawned on his face. "Simon," I nodded, "and others. The board is being completely restructured as we speak." He leaned back against the pillows, suddenly looking all of his 62 years. "I've been such a fool." "Yes, you have. Desadei," I agreed, not trying to soften the truth. "But not just about Julian." My father looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like fear in his eyes. He had never been afraid of me before, and it was a strange thing to see. "What do you know?" he asked quietly. "Everything," I replied. "I know about how you've been secretly taking money from the company for years. I know about how you faked research data to get drugs approved faster. And I know about how you methodically tried to erase Mom's contributions to the company after she died." His face hardened. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually, I can." I stood up and smoothed my dress again. "Mother kept her own records, Father. She knew what you were doing." "Your mother is dead," he snapped, a bit of his old anger showing. "Yes, she is," I said softly. "But I am very much alive. And unlike you, I actually understand the science behind CF27. I've spent the last week going over all of my mother's original research." The fear returned to his eyes. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that Vance Biologics is going to continue, but under new management. My management." I walked towards the door. "Get some rest, Father. You're going to need your strength for the board meeting next week and for the second investigation that will come after that." When I stepped out into the hallway, Arthur was there waiting for me. "Everything is ready," he said. "The press conference is set for tomorrow morning. Isabel is still being questioned. The police found proof that she intentionally tampered with your father's medication several times." I nodded, not surprised. "And Clara?" Arthur's expression softened a little. "She's in the waiting room. She seems torn about whether she should see her mother or your father first." "Neither," I decided. "Tell her to meet me at my penthouse. She can stay with me for a while." A week later, I stood at the head of the Vance Biologics boardroom table, looking at a very different group of people. The board had been completely changed, now made up of scientists and medical ethicists instead of just businessmen and my father's old friends. My father's portrait on the wall had been taken down and replaced with one of my mother, Dr. Lydia Vance, whose incredible work would finally get the recognition it deserved. The clinical trials for CF27 will move forward exactly as they were originally planned, I announced. There will be no shortcuts and complete transparency. This company is going to go back to its original purpose, to heal people, not just to make money. Dr. Lin, one of the few board members I had decided to keep, nodded in approval. "And your father has agreed to step down permanently," I added, in exchange for some considerations regarding the second investigation. What I didn't tell them was about the private conversation I'd had with him in his hospital room the night before. I had given him a choice: face public humiliation and likely go to prison, or retire quietly and keep his reputation, at least in the public eye. He chose to retire just as I knew he would. My father had always cared more about how things looked than about what was real. After the meeting, Sophia came up to me. "You did it," she said, her voice full of genuine admiration. "You took down Julian, saved your company, and brought your mother's legacy back to light, and you did it all in just a couple of weeks." "We did it," I corrected her. "I couldn't have done any of it without your help." She smiled and linked her arm with mine as we walked out of the boardroom. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "With Julian facing attempted murder charges and Isabel probably not far behind, there's not much left of the Croft empire." "That's not entirely true," I replied. "Croft Innovations has valuable assets and a lot of talented employees. It just needed better leadership." Sophia stopped walking and turned to face me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the board of Croft Innovations is meeting this afternoon to vote for a new CEO. I've put your name forward for the position." Her eyes widened in shock. "Me? But I've never—" "You know that company better than anyone," I interrupted. "And you have the vision to turn it into something great. Besides, who better to fix your brother's corrupt legacy than you?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," I suggested simply. "We could achieve amazing things working together as allies instead of as competitors." That evening, I hosted a small dinner at my penthouse. Clara had moved into the guest room, still trying to come to terms with her mother's betrayal and feeling unsure about her place in the world. Arthur had come by to give me an update on my father's move to a private medical facility out of state. Sophia was the last to arrive, flushed with excitement after her first board meeting as the new CEO of Croft Innovations. As we all sat around the dining table, I couldn't help but think about how differently everything had turned out this time. In my previous life, this would have been the day of my funeral, a closed casket service attended by people who cried for me without ever knowing the real reason I died. But instead, here I was, alive and surrounded by a group of unlikely friends. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass of wine. The deep red color of the liquid caught the light, reminding me for a second of blood. Both the blood that had been spilled and the blood that had been saved. To second chances. "To second chances," they all echoed, their glasses clinking together. I took a sip of my wine without any fear, enjoying its rich, complex flavor. The bitter taste of betrayal had been replaced by something else. It wasn't exactly sweet, but it was satisfying in its own way. Maybe it was the taste of justice, or maybe it was just the taste of survival. Later that night, as the city lights twinkled outside my windows, I stood alone on the balcony. My mother once told me that the true test of a person wasn't in how they handled winning, but in how they handled losing. I had lost everything once: my life, my future, my ability to trust people. That loss had taught me more than a lifetime of success ever could have. "Quite a view," Arthur commented, joining me on the balcony with a cup of tea for me. "Your mother would be very proud of you." I took the tea, warming my hands on the cup. "Do you think she had any idea how things would turn out?" Arthur thought about it for a moment. "I think she knew you were much stronger than you looked. The rest of it," he shrugged. "Some things we just have to figure out for ourselves." Inside, I could hear Clara laughing at something Sophia had said. It was a sound I had never heard from her before. We were all starting to heal, slowly but surely. "What will you do now?" Arthur asked thoughtfully. "Now that you've accomplished everything you set out to do?" It was a good question. I had been so focused on surviving and exposing Julian's plan that I hadn't really thought about what would come next. In my previous life, there was no next to think about. This time, I said, the words feeling both strange and right, I've decided to finally live. To live not just as a reaction to what had happened, but to live with purpose. To build something new instead of just trying to avoid being destroyed. I raised my teacup in a silent toast to the night sky, to whatever strange twist of fate had given me this second chance. The warmth of the cup in my hands was a small, simple pleasure the kind of thing I had almost forgotten about in my single minded quest for justice. This time, I wasn't going to waste a single moment. This time, I would drink deeply from whatever life had to offer, without being afraid of what might be at the bottom of the cup. After all, I already knew what poison tasted like. Everything else was just wine.